Hello and welcome to my lifting series where I record every single set and rep in as much of my workouts as I possibly can. I'm running my Myomax training program. This is a 9-week hypertrophy lifting program designed for serious lifters who are ready to elevate their training. It is $10 if you guys want to buy it in the description. That's a great way to support me. But to be honest, you guys can just follow along since I do record everything that I do. This series is pretty much designed to make me the best athlete and best lifter that I possibly can, while along the way share insights with you guys so we can kind of grow stronger together and learn together. Today is a true upper body day. I'm starting off with like a pretty amazing exercise, the chest supported T-bar row. And I've hit on it before, but I really love this exercise because you're so stable. Since you have this chest support right here that takes the core out of it, so it's almost like a bent over barbell row, except you don't have the core being your limiting factor. And with straps, you don't have your grip being the limiting factor either. Today I hit like a big milestone. This is going to be a big milestone because previously I did 2 45s and a 35, but today I'm going up to 3 plates, 3 45s. And for whatever reason, whenever we hit like a new plate, that seems to be a big deal. You know, whenever people like on barbell bench press, whenever people hit their 135, a plate on each side, that's a huge deal. 225, that's a huge deal. 315. I wonder what the history is behind that. Why we only have 45-pound plates? Is it just like, is that all they had available at the time or what? Like, I don't know. But anyway, it just seems kind of odd. But sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Let's get into it. I'm going to aim for, well, I'm not even going to say a number. We're just going to do as many as I can because failure is the most important component besides volume when it comes to hypertrophy training. So. So I got the 8 there. I do feel like that was as hard as I could have gone with like very strict full range of motion form. As I'm sure you guys saw, I was extending all the way at the bottom and then contracting all the way at the top, kind of like bringing my chest all the way down and then ever so slightly bringing it off without bringing off my full back. I think that that's okay to have like a little bit of variance in the range of motion because after all, your body isn't meant to be statically in one position all the time, you know? So moving up and down a slight bit, I think should actually be encouraged. Of course, you know, there's levels to it. Like if you're doing a bent over row or like a deadlift, you don't want to be rounding your back massively, but a little bit of a round may be okay because you're probably going pretty heavy at that point, you know? So a little bit of that is actually inevitable. If you've been following along, then you'll notice that I did include those shrugs at the end. I forgot to mention that for anybody that may be new out there. I do the shrugs at the end of a lift like this just to add in a little bit of shrugging stimulus at the end so that I don't have to actually program in like actual barbell or dumbbell shrugs or machine shrugs as well, just because this program is such high volume and there's so many exercises. I couldn't bring myself to add in another one, and I didn't want to sacrifice like lat volume or something when, you know, shrugs are indirectly hit on pretty much almost every back movement. I mean, when we're doing this, we're hitting our mid traps. When we're doing, you know, like an upright row or something, we're hitting like our upper traps, or whenever we're doing like a shoulder press, you're kind of hitting your upper traps. So, you know, it gets hit indirectly a lot, just like the rear delts get hit indirectly. Now that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be training them directly by any stretch of the imagination. However, I didn't want to give it its own little slot just because that's why I'm supersetting, you know? So I think in my next program, I probably will give them their own time slot or, you know, like their own peace of mind. But for this program, I decided not to. Let's get into set number 2. And I know that I'm not really emphasizing them too much, and you know, I'm not directly hitting like upper traps like a shrug or something. But if you've been following along, you'll know that on the first upper body day of each week, I do like 3 sets of shrugs. This superset at the end of my Smith machine bent over rows. So I figured let's hit a little bit of the upper with a shrugging motion. Let's hit a little bit of the mid and back with scapular retraction motion. So that's what we're doing, and we're gonna see if it pays off. You know, lifting doesn't always have a specific roadmap laid out for you where everything's gonna go right all the time and every choice that you make is gonna be perfect. Sometimes you gotta play around with it because everybody's body is different after all. And you know, your body could be way different than the next guy. And how would you know without playing around? You shouldn't just follow like a cookie cutter program. And that includes my program, Myomax, you know. Maybe it jives with you a lot and you get fantastic gains. Maybe it doesn't. Not everybody's a special snowflake, and not 2 people are gonna be exactly the same. Some people may love barbell back squats and that's all they need for their legs. Another person may need 3 different quad movements in order for them to grow. You're never gonna know until you try. I'd like to address the common misconception that heavy weights are automatically gonna be leading to injury. I think that a lot of people are kind of afraid to go heavy on certain movements, if not all movements, just because they feel like they're gonna hurt themselves and it's just not gonna be worth it. But I'd like to formally say that I completely disagree with that. I think that, yeah, you can be stupid with any amount of weight and injure yourself. You know, if you don't warm up properly and you just jump into it, that's a quick fire way to eventually hurt yourself. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, maybe not in like 2 years from now, but you're increasing that likelihood of it happening, and that's all that matters. Alongside that, ego lifting, where you're using improper form, that can definitely become a huge injury risk in of itself as well. So you just got to evaluate how you're doing things. Because if you're slowly getting stronger with proper form, then your connective tissue is getting stronger, your muscles are getting stronger, you're learning how to lift that weight with proper form, and that's not going to be, you know, applying to that injury percentage metric, that risk of injury metric. So I think that as long as you're not being, you know, stupid about it, and you're working your way up gradually under the proper guidance and using proper form, then you have nothing to be afraid of. And that's why I'm constantly pushing the weight, you know, within certain frames. You know, I'm making sure that my form is correct. I'm making sure that I'm not pushing too hard. I'm making sure that I'm not like increasing weight too rapidly. And then I'm making sure that I'm warming up, and I'm making sure I'm using good form. As long as you're hitting all those, you're good to do whatever the hell you want, as far as I'm concerned. What if I just like snap my back in half right now? That'd be funny for 2 seconds, so then it would be really tragic. All right, now let's move on to the dumbbell incline bench press. Okay, I finally found a good spot to do this. I like to avoid the dumbbell racks just because it gets so busy even late at night. So anyway, Enough talk about that. Let's talk about the lift. I am going from 80 pounds to 90 pounds because last week I hit that upper range of where I want to be for this given lift. I programmed it as between 6 and 10 reps for, you know, these first 2 compound lifts, pretty much of every day across the board. Just because I feel like naturally compound lifts, the more muscles that are used inside of a given movement pattern, the less repetitions that it lends itself to. Just because you get so taxed so easily. So like imagine doing, you know, deadlifts or something. You don't see many people doing like a set of 15s with deadlifts unless they're like really training their conditioning at that point. But for like hypertrophy, you don't really see that. If you ever see deadlifts for hypertrophy, it's usually within that like 5 to 10, 6 to 10 rep range. And that's my same thinking on a movement like this. Like, you know, the dumbbell incline bench press, I think that it's more suited towards moderate reps. So like that 6 to 10 rep range. I would rather do like a compound, like an incline barbell press if I'm doing below 6, and then I'd rather change to like a machine press if I'm doing like above 10. I just think that those exercises lend themselves better. You know, the injury risk probability is probably less with like a machine. Maybe not, I could be wrong about that, but that's just how it seems. It's more fixed into place, and therefore you can power through and get more reps easier versus something like a barbell bench press that's just really suited to be loadable and to do heavy loads. So I think that it lends itself better. So I kind of like categorize exercises into like one of 3 slots. This one is in that moderate to low zone. Like a chest fly, for example, that would be in that like 10 to 15 more higher rep zone. And then something like, you know, the barbell bench press or something that may be in that lower, like less than 5 or 6, or like around that range, like 5 to 8 or something rep range. And I think that it's good to put exercises in different zones like that, because ultimately you want to be adding in a variety of different rep ranges in your training. You don't want every single exercise to be between like the 8 to 12 rep range, for example. I tend to gravitate towards that rep range just because it's my favorite, but I don't train exclusively in that rep range, because after all, your body's going to adapt and then you got to change it up. Just a form of periodization. But anyway, since I'm in that where I want to be, I'm going up and we're going to get as many as we can, okay? And I'm doing some long length partials at the end if I can. See, if it gets any heavier, then I'm just gonna start dropping them down to the floor. It's kind of a pain to bring them all the way over here. Though it is nice to sit them here because it's easier to get them back up. But did you see my form when I lifted them? No bueno. I just spoke earlier about how heavy lifting is a misconception that like everyone thinks that, not everybody, but a lot of people think that heavy lifting lends itself more to injury risk. Either sides of the spectrum are true. You can injure yourself with lightweight too. And that's the stuff that you never see coming. And that's why it's so dangerous. People will lift up an object and be like, oh, you know, there's no way I'm gonna hurt myself by lifting up this box. But it's all about how you lift it, not how much you're lifting. That's what it's all about. I know people, they've slipped discs and stuff just from deadlifting 135. That's their warm-up weight. That's why whenever you're warming up, the warm-up should look just like your regular form is going to look, you know? At least that's the way that I see it. You know, there used to be the major belief that you can't mix cardio and weight training. And I used to fall victim of this like utter bullshit, to be honest, in the past. So I would purposefully not go on runs or train cardio, at least not to like any substantial degree at all, just because I thought, oh, it's going to mess with your weight training. And while if you're like training for a marathon and you're trying to go and lift right after, that will impact it. It's not that black and white otherwise. Like you can totally go for a run even before your weight training, permitted that it's not affecting how much effort you can put in the gym. But I think that it's just a good rule of thumb that you do your weights first, because it typically requires more effort than like something like running or sprinting. And then you can do that later on in the day or on a different day. But it's not like it's gonna like eat into your muscle mass or something. In fact, it takes the body over 2 weeks before it even starts thinking about getting into the muscle stores and stuff like that. Just because it realizes, your body realizes that muscle is very, very hard to build. And why would it tear down all of its hard work? And that's why muscle memory exists, because, you know, you built it all up and your body, it's not like your body forgets. So then it becomes actually easier the next time around. Once you've atrophied the muscle tissue, you can hypertrophy it back up again at a much, much faster rate. Kind of went on a tangent there, but all I'm trying to say is that unless you're like training for a marathon or something crazy and you're running way more than you're lifting, and you're not doing it in a proper order, then yes, it can mess with it. But otherwise, just for like the casual runner that just wants to do it to, you know, burn a few extra calories and feel good about themselves, don't worry about it. Please don't stress about it, and don't just not run just because you read online somewhere on some blog that it's gonna interfere. So luckily, I think that most people are starting to realize that it's less, and people are starting to become hybrid athletes and do both, because I ultimately think that doing a little bit of both is the best way to go. Don't just exclusively be dogmatic and just do one. Okay, I picked up the dumbbells a little bit safer that time, so it didn't really feel like I was straightening myself. I'm personally of the belief that every single set should be, and every single rep of each set in a given lift should be pretty much the same. So therefore, I'm gonna try to match the first and second set with this third set. Of course, the more sets that you do, it gets way harder, and typically the more rest period that you're gonna need in between sets of those later phases is what I find. So, you know, between set 1 and 2, I probably rested like 2 minutes. Between set 2 and 3, it's probably upwards of 3. But you gotta do what you gotta do in order to keep that intensity high, keep that quality high, and really push it to your limit. Okay, I'm moving on to the lat pull down, and I like including a horizontal row alongside a vertical row, or a vertical pull rather, just because when you're getting more of a horizontal row, that's kind of like building more thickness, and then a vertical row is building more lats. People say that all the time, but what does that actually mean? Well, when you're doing like more like a row for thickness, all that means is that your elbow position is a little bit more pointed out like this, and therefore it's going to work less lat and shift the emphasis more to like your mid back muscles, like your rhomboids. You'll get a little bit of erectors, etc. And then, you know, when you're crunching down like this, this is the same movement as going like this when your elbows are really tucked in, because you're working that lat in that position. So therefore, you know, we already hit 3 sets of the T-bar chest supported row, which built, you know, that mid back area. And then we're going to be hitting this for the width. And whenever you guys can include a little bit of both, I think that that's going to be ideal, unless you're trying to specialize in one section of the over the other. So, you know, it doesn't have to be in the same workout. You don't have to be, you know, doing both in the same exact workout, even though I do in this case. You could totally just, you know, program one on Monday, then one on Thursday, or like do a horizontal row day and then a vertical pull day, whatever you want to do. But please at least try and include both if your goal is just overall back development. I'm going up by 5 pounds, 160 to 165. Unfortunately, I can't get a full stretch out at the top like I'd much rather prefer, just because of my height versus the machine. I mentioned that before, but it's just such a bummer. I'm dropping down 90 pounds for the drop set. All right. 2 major functions of the lats or latissimus dorsi, these big wing muscles that protrude out from the sides of our torsos, are scapular extension, scapular depression, humeral extension, so bringing the arm down, and then humeral adduction, so bringing it across the body. So, or bringing the arms more to their sides rather. So I think that whenever you're training a given body part, it's helpful to look at the functions of the body part and identify whether the movement that you're trying to use for that given muscle group actually does the functions that you're looking for. So, you know, a chest, one of the functions of the chest, besides, you know, bringing the scapula out like this, is actually adduction across the body. So when you're doing like a fly movement and going like that, that's training all the functions of the chest. So, you know, when doing a lat pull down, you're getting each of those functions. You know, you're getting scapular depression, you're getting humeral extension, you're getting arm adduction as well when you're bringing in like this. So any movement like that, you're going to be working the lats, and therefore, you know, that's what you want to go for. So any movement that you may see online that just goes against the function, you know, I've seen so many over the years of just scrolling through the internet and seeing like useless exercises, and you just gotta wonder, like, it just sucks when people fall for it. That's all. Let's get into set number 2. We're doing 160 pounds. Sorry, 165, like I said before. Ooh, it's definitely starting to feel pretty darn heavy. All right, let's just go ahead and cut to the third and final set. I definitely need to stick to this weight for a little bit longer. There's no way I'm gonna be able to go up in weight next week. I mean, I only went up 5 pounds and it's still super, super difficult. Like, I don't know. Definitely gonna stay at this weight for at least one more week. For at least 1 week, I mean. Okay, we're now gonna be moving back to the chest. I'm gonna do some machine work. I really love the progression of doing like a free weight in the beginning sector, like the beginning 33% of a workout, and then moving on to machine stuff or something equivalent for the next 33%, and then lastly doing like some cable work or some fly work for the final 33%. I think that's a good matchup, and that's kind of the order of operations in Myomax in this particular, in my training program that I'm running right now. In the future, I may shift the emphasis. You know, you can kind of play around with it. That's what's fun about lifting and creating your own program, is you have the freedom to experiment. So, you know, while right now it's like an even split between different movements, you know, in the future I may do like 50% compound, 25% machine, and 25% fly. But I like to have kind of a mixture of all three, at least at some points in the week. Another hugely common misconception that I still hear about is the idea that you have to do cardio in order to lose weight. But guys, losing fat is just like a simple mathematic equation when it really, that's what it really boils down to. It's just simple math. It's how many calories you're intaking versus how many calories you're expending or burning off. It's really just the law of thermodynamics in a nutshell. So, you know, if you are eating in excess of 500 calories a day, you know, in surplus, more than you are actually expending, then you are going to be gaining about a pound of fat a week, because, or no, that would be, yeah, about a pound of fat a week, because it's around 2,500 calories in excess to gain a pound, or 2,500 calories in deficit to lose a pound, because a pound of fat equals to 2,500 calories in total. So, you know, that's just something to think about, is that you don't actually need to be running or doing cardio, whatever cardio you prefer, swimming, whatever, in order to lose body fat. The only thing that running is going to really help with is kind of slightly speeding up your metabolism, as well as burning off calories. But the amount of calories that you're actually burning while doing so pales in comparison to how much you can eat in comparison. So let's say, you know, doing a 20-minute run, you burn 300 calories, which I think that's about where it'll be. You could just have one little slider or something. It's one little itty bitty slider, and that would be 300 calories. So you can eat that in 2 bites, or you can spend 20 minutes running. Up to you. If you really want that slider, then and you still want to lose weight, then by all means go out there and run that 20 minutes in order to make up for it. But in my book, it's not worth it. So I'd rather just restrict calories rather than relying on doing a ton of cardio or physical activity in order to lower my deficit. But ideally you do a little bit of both, you know, eat in that deficit and then also run a bit if you're trying to lose weight the fastest. I was saying you don't need to do cardio if you don't want to. Okay, I'm going up 10 pounds here. I was really tempted to just throw on 2 plates on each side. We're 10 pounds shy of that. But you know, I'm gonna be good and I'm gonna slowly work up. Gotta practice what I preach, right? Cooked. Well, that's my first set down. I got 2 more to go. The volume is already feeling like a lot. I just really think that I need a rest day. I mentioned this in a previous video, a few days back. I mentioned how my schedule got messed up, so all my workouts had to be shifted over. So I basically have to do like 13 or 14 days in a row with 0 rest breaks. And unless your recovery is just on point, which I've been trying my best to make it on point, that's really challenging to hit without some repercussions, you know, especially at this high of a level. I could totally have like a light day or something, but I'm trying to follow my program to a T because I wrote it that way for a reason, and I don't want to set a bad example, you know what I mean? Especially if you guys are choosing to run it. So I'm not gonna be missing any days moving forward. And you know, like it is challenging right now, but Sunday's rolling around in a few days and I'm excited to be able to take a little break. You know, all I need is really 1 day and then I'll be golden. Shit, I definitely can't count that as 10 or even close to like the mark that I wanted to hit. I'm definitely only going to be able to count that as 8, unfortunately, but oh well. Shit. That last eccentric of the full range of motion repetition could have used some work. I'll try and be more deliberate with my repetitions going forward. Honestly, like the further we get into this program and the more volume is accrued and, you know, added upon, the more daunting and fatiguing it becomes. And the more I'm tempted to rush through my sets. So I need a constant reminder of not doing so, you know what I mean? Next up, I have kind of like a lat focused machine vertical pull. So I talked earlier about how I'm trying to train muscles in accordance to their functions, and that's really like one of the key principles that I bring into my training. So this particular movement, it's training scapular depression, so bringing down the shoulder blades, as well as humeral extension, so bringing the humerus down and towards the body. It's not really getting too much of that arm adduction that we also want. It's another huge component of lat movements. However, I love the stability component. You're locked into place, you have a chest support, and you really just get to focus on one lat at a time. So I'm letting that pass. And another thing is, it's a supinated grip, which will instantaneously involve the biceps to a much larger degree. So you're actually getting a lot of bicep movement out of this movement, a lot of bicep training rather out of this movement as well. So I just think that this is a great movement, not as like a primary exercise for the lats, but more as a supplementational lift towards the end. And that's just what I'm doing. This is towards the end of the workout. You know, my back is already fried at this point. It's just to get in some extra volume without completely taxing myself. So yeah, I'm strapping up because I am pretty exhausted at this point. Oh man, I'm so fried. I stopped at 10 there. I probably could have gotten myself to achieve 12 repetitions with that. But you know, we don't always get exactly what we planned for. And anyway, I went up regardless. I went up 5 pounds on each arm, so a total of 10 for the movement. With this lift, I actually have cheat reps programmed in, so I didn't really cheat too much at the end there, but if you guys feel so inclined, cheat reps are totally encouraged at the end of this lift. Just try and keep the rest of the movement as strict as possible. Then just throw those cheat reps in at the end. I don't think you're gonna end up like injury. I don't think is gonna be a problem because you're so fixed in this movement. And honestly, we're doing it unilaterally, so how much weight are you gonna be able to lift? I especially like that I'm getting some bicep growth out of this lift. Of course, whenever you're doing a pull of any sort, you're gonna be using your biceps to some degree, just because it's a secondary mover of any back movement. However, for the most part. However, this one is especially to a larger degree because your hand is supinated. And since I'm not working biceps directly on this day, I like that I'm getting almost a direct stimulus just for some added frequency to my biceps, because honestly, biceps are a muscle group that can handle the additional frequency. So why not put it through the ringer, you know? Oh man. I'm not quite tall enough to be able to strap up without standing, unfortunately. Okay, now let's move into that last like 33% of the lift. The stuff that I said was going to be marginally easier isn't really the best term, but it is going to be a little bit easier for sure, because it is like cable stuff. So it's going to be more isolation work. That's a better word for it. Some more isolation work, higher rep range, you know, pump and fluff type of activities. It's going to do it. Next up, I'm doing a little back and chest supersets of the isolation variety. I'm going to start with the unilateral straight arm lat pull down. And I really like this variation because since you don't have any elbow flexion or extension, you're not involving the arm nearly as much. You're almost taking it completely out of the lift, and then you just get to work on getting that peak contraction, that peak stretch of your lat. And I like doing it unilateral style. I also like bilateral, but I especially like unilateral because you can really focus on one side at a time, and you're not like constricted by the range of motion of having two arms, because when you have two arms, you're fixed into place like this, and you can only go to your sides. Versus one arm at a time, you can kind of get across the body and then down and really just get in there, get into the trenches of how your body wants to actually move. And that kind of brings up an interesting point that you guys should really be experimenting with. I think you guys should be really experimenting with some unilateral lifts as well as bilateral, just to see how your body likes to move when it's independent of the other side. Because you may have one leg that shakes a bit or concaves a bit, and you wouldn't even know it just because you're so used to doing the bilateral variation. You just don't notice that aspect. So it's good to just kind of like quiz your body a little bit from time to time. I'm going up by 5 pounds, so we'll see how it goes. It may have seemed like I could have gone another couple, but trust me, I could feel that was my breaking point. Another reason why I really like it is by using one arm and then having the other arm just stabilize against the rack or against something. You know, it doesn't need to be the rack, it could be anything, a wall, whatever. You're actually reinforcing that stability. You can kind of get into your groove a little better. This is definitely really effing heavy, I'll tell you that much. Next time I'm not gonna be able to go up. You know, I've been steadily increasing weight since the beginning of this program on pretty much everything. And I think I'm finally starting to hit a bit of a wall on stuff where it's gonna become a lot slower to progress. Not looking forward to it, trust me. I love when I'm on a roll and I'm progressing really, really easily. It's the best feeling ever. And when you're just constantly getting stronger and your program is really doing what you set it out to do. But you know, it's inevitable that we eventually hit a wall. It really is. It may seem like I'm using my body weight to bring it down, but I'm trying to just keep my body kind of fixed in a stable position where I can control the weight more. Okay, luckily this exercise is only 2 sets because it's getting kind of challenging. All right, so that's going to conclude week 3, day 4 of my MyoMax training program. All that I have left to film is a few sets of the seated plate loaded calf raise and a couple sets of the standing unilateral calf raise, which I'm gonna do off camera because I've said it before, but calf training is not that entertaining to watch. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. See you tomorrow for week 3, day 5 of this program. Have a good one.